So, my name is Cameron, and I'm doing an interview with Dr. Bratten today. And my first question for you is, what first drew you to maritime archaeology specifically, rather than another branch of anthropology?
This book, The Sea Remembers by Peter Throckmorton.
That's really cool.
So, I used to be a high school science teacher
Mhm.
in Nebraska, and I taught 7th grade life science, 8th grade earth science, 9th grade physical science, 10th grade biology, and then I alternated teaching chemistry and physics to juniors and seniors. So, one day, the study hall teacher was sick, and she was also the librarian. This was a small school. And so they asked teachers who had a free period if they would cover the study hall during that free period, uh, you know, to make up for her absence. And so I said, sure. So I went into the study hall, which was also part of the library. And so the librarian, every time she got a new book, she put it out on a little stand where students could see them more easily. Well, I was just watching students tell them, do your homework, stuff like that. And then I was just looking for a book just to look at while I was sitting there. So I saw this book and I thought, well, that looks really cool. So I started reading it during that study hall period. It was talking about maritime archaeology, underwater archaeology, working on shipwrecks. And so I thought, well, that's really interesting. So I took the book home, and then looking in here, I saw there were 2 universities that offered programs. One was Texas A&M University, one was East Carolina University. So I called East Carolina University, and they said, well, our program's offered through history. And but my degrees were in biology and science education. So they said, you'd have to take some history courses to get in. I said, okay. Well, I called Texas A&M. They said, no, we welcome students from other fields because we think there's a big overlap. So I was accepted in Texas A&M and went through their nautical archaeology program and earned my doctorate. But that wasn't the first time for archaeology for me. Because I was a public school teacher, I used to have my summers off. And so every summer I'd look for something fun to do. One summer I went to Alaska and did commercial salmon fishing. But the next summer, the teachers were having lunch, and one of them said to me, what are you going to do this summer? I said, just off the top of my head, I said, I don't know, I was thinking about finding an archaeological dig to volunteer for. And the home economics teacher, she said, my uncle's an archaeologist. He's a biblical archaeologist, and he works in Israel every summer. So this was back before people really used email and all that.
Yeah.
So I wrote the guy a letter and said, yeah, I'm interested in doing, can you recommend a project? Do you have one going on? He says, well, I'm not going in the field this summer, but I could recommend, give you a list of projects. And so one of the projects was in Israel on a site called Tel Lachish, and it was excavation of a fortified mound site associated with an attack in 701 BC by a person named Sennacherib. And he was taking over Israel at the time. And so a major battle was fought on top of this hill. There was a city built on top of it with fortified walls and all that. So I spent the summer working on that project. So that was my introduction to archaeology. And then I decided to go to school for it because of this book right here.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's the answer to your question.
I appreciate it. And who was alongside you to teach about the archaeological dig in Israel?
Well, once I decided to go, on the project, I was talking with some of the other people at school, other teachers, and the business teacher was a guy named Curtis Cogswell. So he decided he wanted to go too. So we flew to Israel, and so the project was led by 2 men. One was named Gabi Barkai, and the other one in charge of the actual dig itself was a man named David Ushishkin. Okay, and then they had some other people who were from England that kind of acted as site directors in different places for it. And so those were the people that really taught us how to do the excavation for that summer.
Gotcha. And speaking of the excavations that you've done, has there been the most, sorry, what I'm trying to say is, what was the most rewarding shipwreck or maritime site you've ever worked on, and why?
Well, probably the most rewarding one has been the first Emmanuel Point shipwreck, which was found in Pensacola in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
I started working on it in 1994, and because it's so significant to Pensacola and we worked on it for so many years, it's probably the most rewarding. I've worked on, quite a few others that were really exciting and fun, like up in Lake Champlain,
Mm-hmm.
on a horse-powered ferry. I did projects in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Oh, wow.
But overall, I'd have to say it was the first Emmanuel Point shipwreck. But since then we've found two more from that same colonization fleet right here in Pensacola, Emmanuel Point 2 and Emmanuel Point 3.
Gotcha. And did you get the chance to work with Dr. Bentz on these shipwrecks?
Well, she's a terrestrial archaeologist, so she works on
Okay.
land. Now, I've worked with her, several times on smaller projects where she's visited our site or I've visited her site. But one of the real reasons I was hired for this job in the first place was because I was also trained to do artifact conservation. So
Mm-hmm.
when the artifacts are found underwater on a shipwreck or on the land sites, the terrestrial sites, then I usually get involved in anything that those artifacts need to make them stable, and so we can analyze them, put them on display and things like that. So I get a good bit of overlap between underwater and land here.
That's really cool. And what are some misconceptions do people often have about maritime archaeology?
I think they often think that we're working in water where we can see for hundreds of feet, and that ships still have masts standing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But more often than not, we're working in water where we might only be able to see a foot or 5 inches, and sometimes the only thing that's preserved is the bottom parts of the ship underneath the ballast, the stones that they put in it for weight down there.
Mm-hmm.
So the ships aren't always intact as people think they might be.
Gotcha, okay. And what are some ethical responsibilities do maritime archaeologists have when working with shipwrecks that also may be cultural heritage sites?
Well, anytime we work on these sites, we're actually destroying it
Mm-hmm.
in the process of doing the archaeology. So ethically, we need to do a very thorough job of documenting everything that we see, disturb. So just taking photographs, making really good drawings, taking really good notes, taking care of the artifacts so that we can learn as much information as we can from them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really work with treasure, but some people think that that's the first thing that comes to their mind. But these artifacts, they may be a broken piece of pottery, but to us it's priceless, as if we were finding a bunch of gold bars down there. We found coins and things we're just excited about, but we treat them like artifacts. We don't look at them for how much they might be worth, but what information they can tell us about the people, the time period, and things like that.
Gotcha. How long does documentation usually take?
They say for every 2 months you spend in the field, you'll spend 2 years in the laboratory doing the conservation and the analysis.
Gotcha. Okay. And what is some advice you would give students who are deciding between maritime archaeology and terrestrial archaeology?
They really, they want to be comfortable working underwater. Not everyone is. I mean, you can be, I was not trained to be a really good scuba diver before I started, and so I had to pick some of that up.
Mm-hmm.
But some people find out that they can't dive because they're just physically unable to clear their ears for the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get claustrophobic underwater, particularly like if we go up into the rivers where the visibility is really low. So they need to find out if they're comfortable underwater, and then be, comfortable that they're a good swimmer, and that they work well with other people, because we don't do it by ourselves underwater. And, we've got someone who's always with us, a dive buddy, and we have to trust into the dive safety officer and other people. So, you want to have, the ability to work well with others and things like that.
Gotcha. And were you scuba certified before you did the terrestrial dig in Israel? Or
No.
did you get, okay.
No, once I was accepted into the nautical archaeology program, at that point I went and got certified just before I went to school. So I sort of did it a little bit backwards, because in most cases it's people that have been diving and they're really excited about it, then they decide to want to do it. I did it the other way around, but it worked out for me. But yeah, they say it's far easier to train an archaeologist to scuba dive than it is to train a scuba diver to do archaeology.
Okay. And my last question for you is, when you're not teaching at the university, what do you enjoy in your free time?
Reading.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cooking.
What do you like to cook?
My wife and I have traveled a good bit, and we've been to Italy 5 times, and so we cook a lot with pasta and different sauces and things. I'm not very good at desserts, but I'm really pretty good at making sauces for pasta or meats and things like that. So that's the thing I like to do. I like to make bread.
Gotcha. What's your favorite pasta dish to make?
Favorite pasta dish is probably, I just make a real simple sauce using heavy cream and lemon juice and a little bit of wine and some, the word's escaping me for the second, but not scallions, but instead of onions you buy, I just used them 2 nights ago. What the heck are they called? I'll think of it here in a second. But it's a real simple one, and you add Parmesan cheese to kind of add it as a thickener for it. And it goes really well, like if you're putting shrimp in with it for over pasta. I like that a lot. So that's probably my favorite and easiest one I make. I don't even measure anymore. I just put it all together.
Yeah.
But what the heck are they called? They're like onions, but they're a little bit different. They're about yay long, about that wide.
Are they like cloves or something?
No, not cloves. This is what happens when you get older. Shallots. They're called shallots.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time to interview.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with this? Do you write it up?
So yes, I'm supposed to write the transcript, and then just submit the recording to my professor. And it's I'm not really sure why he's kind of doing this, but I know that he's been assigning interviews to students in the past. Well, they'll interview their like relatives, and then maybe like a month later, unfortunately, they pass away. So they kind of use the interviews as like a kind of something to look back on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. All right.
Well, it was really good to meet you, Dr. Bratten.
Sure.
I really appreciate you
You're
taking
welcome.
the time.